Contrary to popular opinion, Jesus did not invent discipleship. Rabbis with a small coterie of disciples were regularly seen walking around Galilee. Just a few years before Jesus, Rabbi Hillel called 80 disciples. Rabbi Akiva, a famous teacher, a few decades after Jesus, had only 5, but thousands were said to follow him around Israel. In the New Testament itself, John the Baptizer had disciples, as did the Pharisees. The Apostle Paul was formerly a disciple of nationally known rabbi named Gamaliel. Discipleship, or as I am about to relabel it, apprenticeship, was the pinnacle of the first century Jewish educational system. Much like a PhD or graduate program is in our system today. That means to understand discipleship, we first must understand the Jewish educational system. Don't worry, I promise to keep this short. Jewish kids started school around 5 years old at the local Basifa, the house of the book, which was the equivalent of elementary school. Normally, the Basifa was built on the site of the synagogue and ran by a full-time scribe or teacher. The curriculum was the Torah and in an oracle culture. By the age 12 or 13, most kids will have the entire Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy memorized. At that point, the vast majority of the students went home. They would apprentice in the family business or help run the farm. But the best and brightest would go on to a secondary level of education called Bet Midrash, the house of learning, where they will continue their studies. By the age of 17, they will have memorized, wait for it, the entire Old Testament. Now, at this point, the overwhelming majority were done and were basically told to go make babies, pray that they become rabbis, and ply your trade. But the best of the best of the best would apply to apprentice under a rabbi. Now, this was really hard to get into. Apprenticeship programs were the equivalent of the Ivy League today, but even more exclusive. You had to find a rabbi whose yoke were drawn to and then beg to join his band of students. The rabbis would grill you. How well do you know the Torah? What is your take on the Nephilim in Genesis 6? Do you side with Hillel or Shammai on Deuteronomy 24? Tell me, how often do you pray? And if he thought you had the smarts, the work ethic, and chutzpah to one day become a rabbi yourself, he would say something like, "Come, follow me." Or another way to translate this is, "Come, apprentice under me." Now, let's say you were one of the lucky few who became apprenticed to a rabbi. From that day on, your entire life was organized around 3 driving goals. Number 1, to be with your rabbi. Jesus himself invited his disciples to be with him. You will leave your family, your village, your trade, and follow your rabbi 24/7. You were a student, but class was an MWF, Monday through Wednesday or Friday from 11 to 11:50 a.m. Class was live. You will spend every walking or waking moment with your rabbi. sleeping at his side, eating at his table, sitting at his feet, and end up, after long hours, walking behind him from town to town, covered in his dust, all day, every day. Number 2, to become like your rabbi. Jesus had this great line about how the apprentice is not above the rabbi, but everyone who is fully trained will be like their rabbi. That was the heart and soul of apprenticeship, being with your master for the purpose of becoming like your master. You would copy his tone of voice, his mannerisms, his figures of speech. You wanted to be him. Finally, your goal was to do as your rabbi did. The whole point of apprenticeship was to train under a rabbi in order to one day become a rabbi yourself. If you made it through a gauntlet of disciple, and if it was a real if, then when he thought you were ready, your rabbi would turn to you and say something like, "Okay, kid, I will give you my blessing. Go and make disciples." This was what it meant to be a disciple. This is still what it means to be a disciple. The problem is, this is not what most Christians means by discipleship today. Keep reading. Yet, when you look at Jesus' model, whether in 1st century Israel or 21st century America, or whether you are reading this, the meaning of discipleship is perfectly clear. To follow Jesus is to become his apprentice. It's to organize your entire life around 3 driving goals. Number 1, be with Jesus. Number 2, become like him. Number 3, do as he did. Apprenticeship to Jesus, that is, following Jesus, is a whole life process of being with Jesus for the purpose of becoming like him and carrying on his work in this world. It is a lifelong journey in which we gradually learn to say and do the kinds of things Jesus said and did as we apprentice under him in every phase of our lives. Put another way, disciples is a noun.